Let's get right to our first guest today, Kansas Congressman Ron Estes from the 4th Congressional District on the Kansas side. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Ron, I'm doing well. Congratulations. You guys got a Speaker of the House. What a long, strange trip it's been. Tell us what you think about Mr. Mike Johnson and if you think this is good.
Oh, this is actually very good. I mean, Mike's a great guy. He's very solid, very reliable, and dependable, and focuses on a lot of the right things and the things that we've been talking about, and in terms of helping make sure that we address the struggles in the economy and the pain that people are feeling from inflation that's coming out of the federal spending, and supporting Israel and working on border security and actually holding the executive branch and the Biden administration accountable, which is what legislative branch is going to do. And so those are the issues that Mike really wants to work on. And I'm glad we got through the process. We actually had a lot of good folks that went through that, and different folks had different priorities and things they wanted to focus on. And actually having Mike now rise to the top as a speaker is going to be great for us.
Ron Estes is here. He is the Congress. I don't know why I can't talk this morning, Ron. You're my first guest. I'm right on. I'm just getting warmed up. 4th Congressional District in Kansas. Mr. Estes, I want to ask you this: this guy seems like my kind of guy. I mean, he's a staunch conservative. How did you get the votes to get this guy in? I mean, everything you look at with this guy, he's a strong supporter of President Trump. He came out and he was in lockstep with President Trump about maybe some nefarious voting procedures. We can't talk about that anymore because God knows there's no voting irregularities anywhere. But how did you all come to an agreement on this guy? Because he seems like somebody that a real conservative would stand in step with.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, Mike's got a good background within the Republican conference. I mean, he was chairman of the Republican Study Committee, which is actually the largest group of conservative Republicans within the House. And in the last couple of years, he's been serving as the vice chair of the entire Republican conference. So he's been around. He just hasn't been in one of those positions you get in the newspaper, talking about speaker or the majority leader. Those are the ones that, came up as on the first minds when the media talks about who could be the front runner. But Mike has a great reputation, a lot of support across the conference, and respect for the positions that he stands for, and he supports the things that the overwhelming majority of Americans support.
How do you think optically, how do you think this looks to America? And, because when this happened, I thought, man, I just don't know if this is a good idea. It doesn't look good. But then you look at the rest of the world. You look at what the Biden administration has going on. The world's pretty much on fire. Do you think you guys are going to come out of this unscathed?
Yeah, I think I don't personally agree with the motion to vacate process that was put in place that was used to remove Speaker McCarthy from the office, and that's more of it's an internal parliamentary process, I guess, more so than anything else. And so, we spent the last 3 weeks as we've gone through this selection for a new speaker. I think a lot of it goes back to 2023 is going to be a tipping point year from the standpoint of this year we are borrowing more money than all 12 of the discretionary spending bills that we when we debate how much government should be spending. So obviously we're borrowing too much money, we're spending too much money, but it also highlights that those automatic spending programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, that they're spending way beyond the money that's coming in for those programs. So we've got to address how do we help protect those into the future. And I think that was a lot of the discussions around the speaker's race was how do we best move forward? And different folks have different ideas. Some had different priorities. Some wanted to do A first, some wanted to do B first. And Mike was able to sort through all of that and bring together the support to actually say, let's head in this direction. And he gave a wonderful speech when he was sworn in on the floor, even had the Democrats standing and applauding for several of the things that he said, because, again, it goes back to the issues that are important for him are what's important for the American people. And yeah, we've lost a little bit of time working on the appropriations for 2024, but now we're jumping into it and going to work to catch back up.
From the 4th Congressional District in Kansas, this is Congressman Ron Estes. Ron, I know that he sits, that Mike Johnson sits on the subcommittee for the weaponization of the federal government. Can you give me the nuts and bolts about that? And does a guy like this look at the Grassley report that came out yesterday saying that some 40 FBI investigators had looked into the Biden family and they kind of put it on the back burner and downplayed it and poo-pooed it? Does this help in that investigation and looking into some of the Hunter Biden stuff? Does that help the plight of folks that are looking that way?
It really does. I mean, what we're seeing is example after example of certain individuals misusing their authority as members of the federal government. And you see it for certain members of the FBI, certain members of the Department of Justice, certain members of the Internal Revenue Service. And that's the whole discussion around why there is a committee to talk about the weaponization of the federal government is when you swear and to do your job, you should be following the Constitution. You shouldn't be following the Democrat mantra of what they want to do. And we've seen time after time again, over and over again, we had whistleblowers come before us on the Ways and Means Committee from the IRS and kind of broke the lid on this Hunter Biden investigation and the sweetheart deal that they were about to give him and highlighted how that's not at all what has ever been in the past and that it's not the thing that should be done. And so now that they're having to retract those steps, but it's one of those things that we're taking our time to be deliberate, make sure we gather all the facts. We can, lay out that case and prove a case in just like you would proving a case in court that this is the irregularities. These are the things that people are doing wrong. And we need to be able to count on our federal employees to provide service for all Americans in a fair and just way. And that's a piece that we're trying to accomplish with the weaponization of the federal government committee, with the investigations that we're doing with and the oversight committee's doing and the judiciary committee's doing.
Today's one of those news days with this horrible news out of Maine where it's one of those days where if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, will they hear it? Because there's so much going on. Things are going to get kind of lost in the shuffle. But today, that the Biden administration is going to come out and they're going to tout that GDP growth, which doesn't necessarily mean great news for America. It means our interest rates continue to rise. The average family continues to spend, I believe, on average, $250 more per month to survive. How do we, and I know this is what you do, and I know this is why, at the end of the day, Matt Gaetz wanted Speaker McCarthy ousted because he didn't like the spending. How in the heck do we get this in check so we can draw these interest rates down and we don't take stock into a goofy GDP number that really doesn't mean anything for the common everyday man and woman?
Yeah, it really doesn't. And what it also doesn't get talked about by the media, but who wants to support the Democrat agenda coming from the Biden administration, is that because of inflation and because of the extra spending that folks are having to do, that's driving a higher GDP number. But what's behind that is all of the COVID stimulus money that people had gotten over the years. They spent that down over the third quarter in order to build up that GDP number, and as well ran up their credit card debt. Credit card debt's now over $1 trillion for the first time in the United States. And what we're seeing as well is that people are using credit cards to pay for items that you consume, like food. Right. And so that's going to lead to a tougher environment next quarter and first of 2024, because they have to pay back the credit card, and then they'll also have to still buy food to feed themselves then. And that's what we're really focusing on now. As we finish the speaker's race, we're diving into the fiscal 24 appropriations, looking at ways that we can cut spending, looking at ways that we can restrict executive branch actions and programs by saying you can't spend any money on this program, as ways to save money and help reduce the cause of inflation that's coming because of all the federal government spending.
Well, Ron, I know you're on the House Budget Committee. I know you have a lot of work to do. Before I let you go, do you think Travis, Kelce, and Taylor Swift are real? You think these kids are going to make it?
I think it's great. It's kind of tough if you're big celebrities like that with all the media attention to be successful. I think it's a great story. I think, and I wish them both well. I actually had the opportunity to meet Travis about 10 years ago, and he's a really nice guy, and so it's great that if they think they can work out a relationship with their hectic schedules, it certainly is a fun thing.
With all the pressure that you have there in Washington and with all the craziness in this world, I always like to lighten it up just a bit. Sir, you are welcome on this radio station anytime. I know you have a lot of work to do. Congratulations on the new speaker. Now get at it, okay?
All right, great. Thank you.
Ron Estes from the 4th District in Kansas, our guest this morning, our first guest on KCMO Talk Radio.